But as far as playoff openers go, we talked about this after the Atlanta race about how there's a little bit of discussion about how NASCAR is trying to fix some things and whether or not it's working, and what has actually worked for them. And to be honest, yeah, a lot of people rag on NASCAR about dropping the July Daytona race and moving it to August. They're like, oh, it's the middle of hurricane season. Hey, you're never gonna be able to have that. It's gonna be rain, rain, rain. Well, you might have a slight point there. I mean, it's either even in July it rained at Daytona though. So what are you really complaining about there? But in a way, as much as NASCAR purists may hate to say it, and in this regard, originally I was in that same category and frame of mind there that I didn't like the change. But to be honest, there is no better race to end the regular season and set the stage of the playoffs than to have Daytona as that last race. It's just because of the insanity that is Daytona. There's a lot of pressure already riding on people when they're out there at Daytona. It's high stress, high pressure, a lot of chaos. So, in reality, NASCAR hit a home run with that one. But another thing that they've absolutely gotten right is making Darlington the very first race of the playoffs. The last couple of years, they've gotten a really, really, really awesome start to the playoffs at Darlington here, the round of 16. Darlington, by itself, on Labor Day weekend, is just a tradition unlike any other in all of motorsports. The Cookout Southern 500, or can we just say the Southern 500, it's been a tradition in the sport. It's been run 74 years now. It's been around for all but one of NASCAR's 75 years. It's a crown jewel event. Darlington's a crown jewel kind of track. A lot of the drivers love, fans love, and Darlington just has that certain reputation about it. There's a reason they call her the Lady in Black. There's a reason they call her the track that's too tough to tame. Darlington is a place that just naturally produces a lot of chaos too. And regardless of where you stand on whether or not having a lot of cautions makes for a good race, regardless of where you stand on whether or not a lot of lead changes makes for a good race, whether or not a lot of chaos makes for a good race, it's hard to argue especially after what we saw tonight, that NASCAR hadn't absolutely hit a grand slam with making Darlington the first race of the playoffs. And it absolutely was a fantastic race tonight. Plenty of chaos. Maybe playoff races need chaos. That's what makes the playoffs interesting. It's just like any other professional sport out there in the postseason. There's always going to be postseason moments. There's always going to be unlikely heroes. There's always going to be these crazy moments that keep you glued to the TV wanting to watch, whether it be the NBA Finals, the World Series, you name it, the Super Bowl, etc. And it's really no different with NASCAR than it is any other professional sport. There's got to be a little bit of chaos, a little bit of something interesting that makes the playoffs great. And that you got that today at Darlington. Hopefully, it's going to be difficult for the rest of the playoffs to live up to what we saw tonight, but Darlington definitely got the stage set pretty well. We talk about, first off, let's talk about the win here. Kyle Larson picks up the win in this one. It's the 299th win in the Cup Series for Hendrick Motorsports, and the 500th win for Hendrick Engines altogether. So, big congratulations there to the team at Hendrick Motorsports as they continue to, even though, regardless of what your opinion is on Hendrick Motorsports, they are the premier team in the sport, and they continue to prove it week in and week out, and year in and year out. So congratulations to the guys at Hendrick Motorsports. They'll be looking to try to get that 300th Cup Series win next week at Kansas, and honestly stand a pretty good chance at it, most likely. But today's race, you had 14 lead changes. You had 7 different leaders in the race. You had Denny Hamlin pretty much put on a clinic and dominate the entire race. He had up through the third stage. He had 174 laps led, swept stages 1 and 2, and he was just absolutely dominant. He had a lead of at least half a second pretty much the entire time that he led. Then later on in the race, chaos did not play into his favor there. As a matter of fact, it never does when you sweep the stages. It seems like something always happens in that third stage to set you back. But the race had 9 cautions. All of those cautions were for incidents on track, save for the stage 2 break, and then the rather peculiar caution that I've never seen in 31 years of being a fan of the sport, and something we probably will never see again. Had a caution they threw for the the lights there on the inside of the track that are behind the inside retaining wall through turns 3 and 4, those lights didn't come on when the sun started to go down. And so it was, as the sun went further and further down, it got dark, really dark over at turns 3 and 4, to the point where NASCAR eventually just had to throw a caution. They were going through trying to see if the drivers were okay with continuing to run the race without that. They ran like 15 caution laps before finally they decided to red flag the race and park them on the backstretch till they could get those lights fixed. All in all, it took about 7 minutes in total under the red flag before they could get going again. But just a rather strange caution and red flag break there. But let's look through all the chaos that happened today, starting with Martin Truex Jr., one of the favorites to potentially be there in the Championship 4 when we get to Phoenix. He had a loose wheel, ends up going down 2 laps because he had to come in and pit twice under a green flag pit stop cycle. Denny Hamlin had a very similar thing happen after he had led most of the race and won stages 1 and 2. He had a loose wheel, had to come in and pit twice, set him back a little bit. Then he got caught up in a crash that just mired him in the back of the pack for the rest of the way. A lot of people probably aren't shedding a tear over that. Denny Hamlin, no doubt, become the new villain of the sport here over the last month or so. Michael McDowell had early on had to pit twice. I don't know if it was for a loose wheel or not. I don't remember, but he had to pit twice. He ended up going 3 laps down because he was already he wasn't handling very well all race long. He was already a lap down before all of this happened, so he goes down 3 laps and never really recovered. And then to top it all off, he got caught up in a big crash late in the race. It ended up ending his day. Christopher Bell, pole sitter for the race, absolutely the fastest car in practice, looked like he was going to be the guy to beat. Well, being the fastest doesn't always guarantee you a win. It doesn't really even guarantee you'll stay up front for very long. He started up front, led the first 30-some-odd laps of the race, and then when the first green flag pit stop cycle came up, the jack fell when they were putting on the right side tires. They had to lift it up. He ends up getting passed by Tyler Reddick there on pit road, and he never led again from that point, so just continued to go downhill. He ended up making contact with the wall at the end of stage 1 with that caution that ended stage 1, where he hit the wall and then Bubba Wallace spun out at about the same time. So that basically just ruined Christopher Bell's day from there on out. It's just a lot of trouble there for those few guys that were playoff drivers. He had an interesting controversy here with Kevin Harvick. There was a battle for the lead shaping up between him and Tyler Reddick, where basically he was about to make a move for the lead when it was time for a green flag pit stop cycle, and it was time for him to come in. Well, they had made the commitment to come in. He had already started his way onto pit road when a caution comes out. He had a spin. I think it was for Ryan. Yeah, Ryan Newman spun out there coming off the exit of turn 4. Brought out the caution pretty much as soon as Kevin Harvick made it to pit road. NASCAR had to go back and review it. They determined that he ended up coming down pit road after it was already closed, received service on a closed pit road. That's a penalty. Took Kevin Harvick out of a potential win, honestly, because he was running really well. It kind of came out of nowhere. It looked like he was going to get a good run on Tyler Reddick. Who knows where he would have cycled back out after the green flag pit stop if it had stayed green, but instead gets penalized. And looking back at the footage, he did indeed come down basically at the wrong place at the wrong time. It happened basically right as he was turning onto pit road. The caution came out before he hit the commit line. So just tough luck there for Kevin Harvick. Tyler Reddick, who again looked like he was going to be somebody that could win the race, he had a problem with his onboard computer there on the dashboard. It was not displaying what gear that he was running in. He had to get that fixed. That ended up taking him out of the lead at that same caution. It was just a really bizarre moment because not only did you have the penalty, but you had the leader ended up taken out by this because he had to have that repaired. So that's what sets up Kyle Larson to take the lead, and Kyle Larson didn't look back from that point. He got in clean air, and he just dominated his way to the finish. Something that we don't really talk about a whole lot since he's... At least you probably didn't hear about him a whole lot tonight because he's not in the playoffs, even though he's kind of in contention for the Owners' Championship. Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott had a fantastic day today. He ended up coming in with a quiet 8th place finish. He was mired at the back a couple